people see the end result, right? Legacy Conference, for those who don't know, conference that we did in Chicago, 3-day conference, every year, every summer in July. 2,000 people would come from cities across America, even from London and South Africa and so forth. And um, all the Christian hip hop artists, Lecrae, KB, Andy Mineo, the poets, Jack Hill Perry, Preston Perry, Ezekiel, Jeanette, all of them. Preachers from John Piper to Francis Chan to, Tabidi, um, Eric Mason, so it was, you see that and you're like, oh man, that's amazing, but again, it's it was never envisioned to become that. It kind of grew into that. But what it started with really is, you know, uh, my wife and I opening up our house, and so when Lecrae and other artists would come into Chicago to do a concert before they were charging, what they're charging now, and before they were putting up at all these fancy hotels, like, the church would say, hey, we could pay you $250, and but we can't cover your housing or in hotel or whatever. So we ended up becoming the place where they ended up staying, because at the time we moved from our 1 bedroom apartment, we bought a 6 bedroom house, in
Mm.
the city. uh, and so we would always just kind of keep one room open for short-term guests. And so we just built some relationships with some of the artists, and we were all growing in this journey together and disciple making. This is kind of my earlier journey in this, being discipled by Soup and Dan Ball and others. um, and so they would come do like block parties. We were just do in our neighborhood. We live in on the west side of Chicago, which is kind of seen as, again, a disinvested, crime
Mm.
ridden community. And but So yeah, we just minister, and then we would do some. Did a lot of work with youth ministers, and so we would do workshops and bring Dan Bond, Sue Campbell, Lecrae, teach workshops on disciple making. And so these youth workers would come and they'd be like blown away, because they were doing, the junior deacon board, they were doing the youth choir, they were doing, the traditional stuff. And but this idea of disciple making, this idea of life on life ministry, reproducing into students who could reproduce into others, was a new concept for
Mm.
many. And so that continued just to grow, So we did one workshop like a Saturday and had 50 people at it. And then that grew into 150 the next year. And then it was like, okay, we got something now. People are coming from Grand Rapids, surrounding cities, to this. And so then that came in, formed into the Legacy Conference. I remember I was driving a school bus at the time to pay my bills. And I had a break from dropping kids off or whatever, and I'm on the phone with Lecrae, and I'm like, "Hey, man, so you've been part of this kind of momentum that was building." I was like, "What should we call this conference?" And he was like, "Man, it's called Legacy."
Mm.
So the name has nothing to do with me. Really the vision of a conference has nothing to do with me. Um, it was being faithful with a little bit. Again, how can I pour into people? How can I be hospitable? um, and God started bringing people together who had a common vision, and grew this.
Yeah.
So the pandemic hit, 4 years ago, 2020, and we put all the conferences on hold. um, and we just did a kind of a coming back to life party, almost in a way. Legacy Conference Chicago, about a month or two ago, with just about 120 people or so, and intentionally wanted it to be small again, to start laying the foundation. And so we're doing another small gathering in Houston in a week, December 9th.